The year is 1864. Midnight presses against the fog-choked outskirts of London, thick enough to swallow sound, thick enough to hide sins. A single carriage rattles down Tote-Hill Fields Road, its wheels cutting through the silence like a blade dragged across wet stone. Inside it, a woman sits with her hands bound in her lap. A strip of linen covers her eyes. Another covers her mouth. Her heart thunders against her ribs in a rhythm no one will ever hear, because she is already a ghost, and the place she is being taken was built to turn living souls into shadows. A guard in a soot-black coat rides beside her, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. He doesn't look at her. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. He has done this before, many times, too many times, and every time it ends the same way. The prisoners vanish. No trial, no record, no burial, no grave, just disappearance, folded neatly into a bureaucratic silence that Britain perfected during Queen Victoria's reign. If you've ever wondered how people could vanish in the empire that ruled a quarter of the globe, you're about to learn, because this story isn't about a prison built of stone. It's about a prison built of secrecy. A prison that operated in darkness so thick it stained the walls. A prison where voices died without ever making a sound. The carriage stops at an unmarked gate, iron, rusted, massive. Its hinges groan when it opens. A bell tolls from a distant church. The woman inside flinches. She has not seen daylight since the moment she was taken from her home. The man who signed the order for her arrest used 2 words that destroyed thousands of lives in Victorian Britain: lunacy certification. Under the Lunacy Act of 1845, anyone could be declared insane with the signatures of 2 medical officers and a magistrate. Countless women were institutionalized for being melancholic, disobedient, opinionated, politically troublesome, or simply in the way. Husbands signed their wives away. Politicians silenced critics. Families hid scandals. And in some cases, the Crown moved those who knew too much into a network of secretive holding sites that historians are only now beginning to piece together. The woman in the carriage has a name: Lady Eleanor Hargrave, aristocrat, writer, reformist, a woman who published 1 article too many, a woman who pointed her pen at a minister who preferred corruption to daylight, a woman whose voice became inconvenient, so she was taken at night and brought here, to a place known in rumors as the Midnight Court. The Midnight Court never appeared on maps, never appeared in legal texts, never appeared in Queen Victoria's speeches, but it appeared in whispers. It appeared in the margins of reports written by asylum reformers like John Connolly. It appeared in letters smuggled out by terrified attendants. It appeared in the diaries of women found years later in the back wards of Colney Hatch Asylum, who spoke of black cells under London where the sun is not permitted to go. Tonight, Lady Eleanor is delivered into one of those cells. Guards drag her from the carriage. Her boots scrape against cobblestones slick with freezing mist. She stumbles but does not fall. Not yet. She has spent 3 days without sleep, 3 days without speaking, 3 days trying to remember whether the world outside still exists. They lead her through a courtyard lit by a single oil lamp. The shadows bend around her like living things. She feels them reaching for her, brushing her sleeves, tasting the edges of her fear. The main door looms ahead, oak reinforced with iron bands. A guard unlocks it, with a key longer than Eleanor's hand. The door swings open and exhales a gust of cold, stale air. She hears dripping somewhere in the dark. She smells damp stone, mold, dust, and beneath it all, something else, something human, something old. This is not a prison designed for criminals. This is a place designed for erasure. Inside, the corridor stretches downward like a throat swallowing her whole. Each step echoes, each breath thickens, each sound vibrates with history no one wrote down. The walls are bare, except they aren't. Not really. The guards pass them without looking, but Eleanor, even blindfolded, can sense the grooves carved into the stone. She can smell the faint traces of oil from hands that touch the wall before her. She can almost hear the whispers trapped in the mortar. She is not the first, and she will not be the last. Her escort stops before a door. Heavy, iron, cold. A lock clicks. The guards shove her inside. She stumbles onto stone. Her hands strike the floor. Pain flares up her arms. Before she can rise, the door slams. Bolts slide. Keys turn. Footsteps fade. Silence smothers everything. She waits for her eyes to adjust, then remembers she is still blindfolded. She pulls the cloth off. It makes no difference. The cell is pitch black, not the darkness of night, the darkness of absence, the darkness of total deprivation, a darkness so complete it feels thick enough to drown in. She breathes slowly, carefully. She steadies her shaking hands on the floor. Cold stone, damp, unmoving. But then her fingers brush something etched into the surface. A line, then another, scratches, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Someone was here before her. She runs her hand across the wall. More scratches, deep, desperate, letters carved with fingernails, words broken by fear, names cut into the stone like gravestones hidden underground. The midnight court didn't kill its prisoners. It smothered them, silently, legally, elegantly. The perfect Victorian crime. No blood, no bodies, just paperwork and gas lamps and cells preserved in darkness where minds unraveled at the speed of silence. Eleanor whispers into the void. Is anyone here? Only the dripping answers. If you're still watching, you may be wondering how a queen who ruled the mightiest empire on earth allowed places like this to exist. The answer is simple. Power hates noise, and prisons like this are built to silence everything that threatens it. Reformers, writers, activists, journalists, women who spoke too loudly, men who knew too much, people whose memories were dangerous to the stability of a world built on hierarchy, obedience, and empire. Eleanor presses her back to the wall. She closes her eyes, though it makes no difference. She breathes, slow, steady, a captive heartbeat in the dark. But she is not broken, not yet. Far above her, the world continues. Gas lamps burn along the Thames. Carriages clatter across Westminster Bridge. Politicians argue in Parliament. The Queen sleeps beneath velvet and gold, and beneath her empire, in a chamber with no windows and no clock, Lady Eleanor Hargrave waits, alone, forgotten, silent. But the darkness has not taken her voice. Not yet. And as long as she remembers who she is, the midnight court has not won. Not tonight. Not yet. There is a myth that Victorian Britain was a lighthouse of order and civility, a place of reason, a place of progress, a place where the rule of law guided the empire like a steady hand on a moral compass. But step into the corridors beneath its prisons, its asylums, its workhouses, and you will see the truth. Order was never the aim. Silence was. The machinery that swallowed Lady Eleanor Hargrave did not begin with the midnight court. It began decades earlier, when Parliament discovered how easy it was to erase inconvenient lives with ink and signatures. And by the time Eleanor's blindfold was ripped from her eyes and plunged into darkness, that machinery had grown into something unstoppable, something efficient, something elegant in the way only cruelty sanctioned by the state can be elegant. Above her cell, above the dripping stone, above the iron doors that hid the screams of the forgotten, a world of paperwork ticked relentlessly forward. Forms, certificates, declarations, reports marked urgent and confidential, each document a cog, each signature a gear, and the entire machine turning silently under the watchful gaze of a queen whose empire demanded quiet. To understand how Eleanor vanished, you need to understand this machine. The Lunacy Act of 1845 was its backbone, a law that declared all individuals deemed insane to be wards of the crown, detained for their own safety and for the safety of society. It allowed doctors to diagnose madness after moments of observation. It allowed police to escort citizens to institutions without trial. It allowed the Home Office to remove seditious persons without drawing public attention. And when secrecy was needed, it allowed the government to transfer prisoners off-book into facilities whose very existence was never acknowledged. This wasn't paranoia, this was paperwork. The Victorian age built institutions with beautiful facades and monstrous interiors: Colney Hatch Asylum, Broadmoor Criminal Lunatic Asylum, Bethlehem Royal Hospital, Wakefield Prison, Millbank Penitentiary. Their bricks were solid, their records were neat, their walls were thick, their cells were designed for silence. And in the unlit corners of those institutions were people much like Eleanor, women too outspoken, men who published the wrong ideas, journalists who wrote in defense of the poor, reformers who exposed corruption, Irish nationalists, suffrage pamphleteers, political critics accused of belonging to radical societies. Some were imprisoned for crimes, many were imprisoned for inconveniences. The midnight court was where the truly inconvenient went. Standing in the nerve center of this machine, commanding the unseen, was a man whose name appeared nowhere publicly, yet everywhere secretly. Dr. Samuel Ferris, superintendent, inspector, advisor to the Home Office. A man who believed that the greatest threat to the empire was not violence, but disobedience, not protests, but ideas, not riots, but words. He wrote in one private memorandum that historians later uncovered, "Society must be shielded from minds that think themselves uncontrollable. Silence is the only cure." Ferris oversaw the dark wards, the unlit cells, the padded rooms where screams dissolved into the hours, the underground holding chambers that the public never saw, the same dark system that took Eleanor. He reviewed lists of citizens flagged for disappearance. He read reports of unruly women who published pamphlets challenging industrial abuse. He read dossiers on journalists who dared to criticize colonial policy. He recommended their detainment. He justified their removal, and when necessary, he assigned them to places like the Midnight Court. But the machine was not his alone. Publishing houses were pressured, newspapers threatened, quiet clerks stamped papers with trembling hands. Police forces were instructed to arrest without question. Physicians wrote diagnoses that sealed fates without ever meeting the patient. Magistrates approved commitments in seconds. Families signed away relatives out of fear, shame, or convenience. No one saw the whole machine, but everyone felt the gears turning. Back in her cell, Eleanor sat with her knees pulled tightly to her chest, listening to the faint vibrations through the stone. Dripping water, a distant cough, faraway footsteps, the muffled rattle of chains. She heard a sound from the wall beside her, soft but deliberate. 3 taps, then silence, then a fourth. A message. Someone else was alive in the dark. Eleanor pressed her palm to the cold stone. She tapped back, once, twice. A pause, then once more. A reply came. 2 taps, then 2 more, then 1. Not a language yet, just proof. Proof she was not alone. Proof the darkness had witnesses. Upstairs, the records room hummed with activity. Clerks copied names into ledgers, black ink on white paper. Transferred, committed, removed for treatment. Eleanor's name would appear in one of those books, and beside it, in neat handwriting, the words, "Held at Her Majesty's pleasure," a Victorian phrase that meant indefinite imprisonment without trial, a phrase that buried people deeper than any grave. Dr. Ferris walked through the corridor above her. His boots struck the floor with a rhythm that Eleanor would have felt through the stone if she had been listening. He carried a lantern, but only he was permitted its light. The prisoners below were not allowed flame. They were not allowed shadow. They were allowed only darkness. He entered the observation chamber, a room where guards watched the unseen, listening for disturbances in the lower cells. a place where silence was measured, recorded, enforced. Ferris scanned the chart and saw a notation about Eleanor. New arrival, high spirit, political inclination, recommendation, evaluate resilience. Evaluate resilience, the Victorian euphemism for breaking someone without leaving marks. He nodded once and left. Below, Eleanor lay with her cheek against the stone, her breath shaking, her fingers tracing letters carved by the prisoners who came before her. An E, an M, a fragment of a phrase, not lost, and the rest chipped away. She did not know who wrote it. She did not know if they survived, but the stone remembered them, and now the stone held her too. If you're still watching, you may be thinking that this sounds like a nightmare, something unthinkable, something impossible in a civilized empire. But the most frightening truth of the Victorian era is not that these systems existed. It's that they were accepted, normalized, hidden behind decorum and lace and the polite veneer of progress. The machine of disappearance did not need public approval. It needed public ignorance. And it had that in abundance. Eleanor closed her eyes. The tapping began again, more deliberate this time, more urgent, a rhythm she began to recognize. Not random, not accidental, a code, a call, a lifeline. The machine wanted silence, but in the depths of the midnight court, voices were beginning to stir, whispering through stone, echoing in darkness, refusing to be erased, and the machinery of disappearance was about to face resistance, even here, even now, even in total darkness. There is a point in every prison where the corridors stop being corridors and become something else entirely, something deeper, something older, something no architect will admit drawing and no minister will acknowledge funding. In most places, these spaces are myths, but beneath Windsor Castle, beneath the sweeping arches, beneath the velvet chambers, beneath the polished marble floors where queens walked and foreign dignitaries bowed, those myths had foundations, stone foundations, cold foundations, forgotten foundations. The Midnight Court was not the only secret cell in Victorian Britain. It was only the beginning of a network that spread under hospitals, under asylums, under military barracks, and under royal estates, where the empire hid the people it could not afford to let the world see. People who knew too much, people who refused to bow, people like Lady Eleanor Hargrave. 3 days after her arrival, she was moved, shackled at the wrists, blindfolded once again, dragged through tunnels that twisted like veins beneath the city. She did not know where she was being taken. She only knew that the air grew colder. The walls shifted from rough stone to smoother cuts of limestone. The sound of dripping water changed pitch. The footsteps of the guards echoed differently. She could feel when the earth above her changed, when London's underbelly gave way to something older, heavier, more silent. When the blindfold was finally removed, she was no longer in the city. She was beneath Windsor. Above her head, the most photographed residence in the empire stood in glory. Flags flew, guards marched. Visitors admired the towers and the gardens and the shimmering windows of St. George's Chapel. Tourists today still walk its halls. They see splendor, they see royalty, they see grandeur carved in stone, but they have no idea what lies beneath their feet. If you've ever visited a castle and wondered what hid behind bricked arches, sealed doors, or barred passageways labeled "No Entry," you may not want the answer, because the Victorians were masters of concealment, and Windsor was not exempt from the empire's hunger for secrecy. Beneath the castle, archaeologists have found sealed tunnels, collapsed staircases, forgotten rooms whose original purpose is unknown. Some date back to the medieval era. Others, based on brickwork, mortar, and tool markings, were expanded or reinforced in the 19th century, during Victoria's reign. That is where Eleanor was taken. Her new cell was deeper than the Midnight Court. The descent to it felt like falling into a throat carved through centuries. Steps dipped unevenly. The air carried the metallic taste of old chains. Lanterns flickered, casting shadows that twisted like accusations. This was not a holding cell. This was not temporary confinement. This was the end of the line. A place for the condemned who were never officially condemned. A place for the living who were meant to become history's missing. The guards removed her blindfold. Eleanor blinked into darkness but saw nothing. Not because there was no light, but because the light was behind her, and the room swallowed it before it could touch anything. The cell was larger than the one in the midnight court, and colder. A cold so profound it seemed to seep from the stones themselves, as if they absorbed centuries of despair and exhaled it through the cracks. A single voice echoed from somewhere in the blackness. "You're new." Eleanor froze. Her breath caught in her throat. She could not see the speaker, but she could hear the exhaustion, the dryness, the years. The guards did not react. They didn't silence him. They only stepped back through the door, closed it, and bolted it shut with the finality of a tomb. Eleanor tried to speak, but her voice cracked. Who are you?" "Just another shadow," the voice answered. "Like you will be." She pressed her palm to the wall. The stone was damp, and as her fingers traced along it, she felt the unmistakable grooves of carvings, words, symbols, names, short scratches, deep gouges, a history carved not by hands but by desperation itself. These carvings were not random. They were a record, the only record. Victorian prisons did not document these people, but the stone did. She moved her fingers slowly along one line. JH 1857. Another. Brennan. Another. CN. Still fighting. These corresponded to real historical disappearances. John Huxley, an Irish agitator. Thomas Brennan, a journalist who vanished from London. Caroline Norris, a suffrage advocate committed for hysteria. Their files ended abruptly. Their stories dissolved into rumor. Historians never found where they went. Eleanor had found them. The voice in the darkness shifted. She heard chains scrape. "They brought you here because you wrote something, didn't you?" Eleanor swallowed. "Yes." He sighed. Writers always die slowly. Above them, the stone ceiling groaned. Windsor Castle was a living thing, settling into its ancient bones. Footsteps echoed faintly. Servants, guards, perhaps even the Queen herself walking halls gilded with light, while, beneath her, people dissolved in perpetual night. Victorian society believed in surfaces, in appearances, in polished silver and impeccable decorum. But the empire's stability depended on what it buried, and under Windsor, the burial was literal. The man in the dark leaned forward, and Eleanor could finally make out his silhouette. Thin, gaunt, hair long and tangled, clothes ragged from years without sunlight. "You still have hope," he whispered. "I can hear it in your breathing. They will take that from you. They took it from all of us." Eleanor shook her head, but doubt gnawed at her. She felt the cold pressing into her bones. She felt the weight of burial. "No," she whispered, "I won't let them." He laughed softly, not cruelly, not mockingly, just brokenly. "They all say that." She turned back to the wall. The carvings seemed endless, but a section near the floor caught her attention. Different handwriting, lighter strokes, fewer years behind them. It read, "We are not shadows." Eleanor's breath hitched. Who wrote this? "I think she believed it," the man answered. "I don't know what happened to her. One day the guards took her. They said she was being re-evaluated. No one returns from re-evaluation. That word again. Evaluate resilience. Break the spirit. Silence the mind. The empire didn't want martyrs. It wanted emptiness. Eleanor traced the words again, feeling their defiance, feeling the ragged determination of whoever carved them, feeling the truth buried beneath Windsor like a heartbeat refusing to stop. If you're still watching, you might be realizing a horrifying truth. Victorian Britain did not simply hide its crimes. It built monuments on top of them. Castles, hospitals, museums, palaces, and beneath them all, silence. Eleanor closed her eyes, not to escape the darkness. There was no escape from that, but to gather herself. She inhaled shakily. "We are not shadows," she whispered. For the first time, the man did not laugh. Instead, he spoke with something unexpected in his voice, something that sounded like memory, or hope, or a flicker of the person he once was. "That's what she used to say," he murmured. "The one who carved it." Eleanor leaned closer. What was her name? He hesitated. Then he said the name that history erased. Magdalena. A name. A survivor. A trace. The darkness did not feel as empty anymore, and far above them, Windsor Castle's walls shuddered under the weight of a secret they were never meant to hold. For centuries, the darkness beneath Windsor Castle remained sealed, stone on stone, brick on brick, door after door, locked with keys that no longer existed, guarded by silence thicker than the earth above it. The prisoners who vanished into those tunnels were meant to disappear entirely, their names dissolved into dust, their stories evaporating through cracks in the walls like forgotten breaths. And for a long time, it worked. The empire moved on, the queen grew old, governments rose and fell, wars began and ended. Generations walked through Windsor's grand halls without knowing what was buried beneath their feet. But history rarely stays buried, not forever, not when the walls themselves whisper. It is the year 2008. A team of restoration workers is hired to stabilize a section of Windsor's lower structures, an unremarkable assignment on paper, nothing more than routine reinforcement of aging beams beneath a storage corridor no tourist ever sees. But when they remove an old timber panel warped by moisture, the wall behind it does not behave like a normal wall. It sounds hollow. It vibrates differently when tapped. And behind a layer of plaster, someone notices an unnatural seam, a straight line, a false partition. They break through. Dust explodes outward like breath released from a sealed tomb. The air is freezing, still, thick with centuries of untouched darkness. Their flashlights slice into the void, revealing a narrow passageway lined with stone darker than pitch. It curves away from the light like a creature recoiling. The workers descend, unaware they have stepped into one of the most disturbing secrets of Victorian Britain. The first thing they see is the iron gate, heavy, warped with age, bolted shut from the outside, a gate meant to keep something in, not out. The second thing they see is the carvings, names, dozens, hundreds, carved into walls with fingernails, bits of bone, broken stones. The workers shine their lights. At first, the marks mean nothing, but then someone kneels, touches a groove, realizes it forms a letter, then a word, then a sentence. "We are not shadows." The same phrase Eleanor traced with shaking fingers. The same defiance scratched into stone by a woman lost to records, erased from official history, but immortalized here in the darkest corner of the royal estate. One worker whispers, "What is this place?" No one answers, because deeper inside lies something even more haunting. A second chamber, square, silent, empty of furnishings, but its walls are covered from floor to ceiling in carvings. Names, dates, symbols, prayers, pleas, a map of suffering etched by countless hands. In one corner, they find a crude drawing, a circle, a crown, and beneath it 3 small shaky letters, E.H. Eleanor Hargrave, the woman who disappeared from London in 1864, the woman the government claimed had fled abroad, the woman whose body was never found. Her name is here, scratched into Windsor's underworld like a final heartbeat frozen in stone. But she is not the only one. There are marks associated with Irish Republican prisoners held without trial, initials matching suffrage-era activists whose fates remain unknown, letters corresponding to newspaper editors who vanished during Queen Victoria's harsher crackdowns on sedition. Some carvings even predate Eleanor, going back to the early 1850s, corroborating theories long dismissed by Victorian historians as conspiratorial. The room is a ledger written by the prisoners themselves, a catalogue of the disappeared, and at the center of that catalogue is another mark, small, delicate, placed lower than the others, almost overlooked. A single word, carved in Greek, worn by time, barely visible under the flashlight's trembling beam. Phos, light. It is the signature of the woman, known only through whispers in Chapter 3. Magdalena. Her mark survived, her voice survived, her defiance survived, even when her body did not. If you are still watching, this is the moment you understand the true horror of empire. It is not the violence that defines an age, it is the silence that follows. The workers reported the discovery. The palace sealed the area, officially for safety assessments, unofficially to determine how much truth could be allowed into the modern world. Historians were granted limited access. They photographed the walls, catalogued the markings, matched initials to documented disappearances, cross-referenced dates with asylum records. The evidence was overwhelming. Victorian Britain, a society that prided itself on progress, morality, and reason, had maintained an underground system of off-record detentions beneath its most sacred institutions. Not merely prisons, not merely asylums, but a sealed network of darkness designed to consume the empire's unwanted. 21 confirmed names, 17 partial matches, dozens more marks too eroded to interpret. A hidden archive of suffering chiseled into stone by hands trembling in the dark, and among them, Eleanor Hargrave, her final record, not in a ledger or a death certificate, but etched in the silent cold of a chamber no sunlight touched for over a century. Her story does not end with escape, because she never escaped. Her story ends with discovery. The workers found a final carving in the farthest corner of the chamber, nearly erased, so faint it could only be seen when light struck it from a certain angle. The letters form a sentence in English, jagged, desperate, carved by someone who knew the end was near. We endure. Her last words, not written on paper destined to burn, not whispered in a cell where no one could hear, not shouted to guards who would not answer, carved into the wall, into the stone, into the earth itself, so that someone, someday, would find them. And you just did. If you're still here, it's because you understand why these stories matter, because you know that history is not just facts, it's memory, it's echoes, it's scratches on a wall that outlive kingdoms. It's the truth buried beneath palaces, waiting for someone brave enough to look downward instead of upward. Queen Victoria's empire collapsed in 1901. The prisoners beneath Windsor did not live to see it fall, but their words survived, their marks survived, their resistance survived. The Midnight Court is gone, its records dust, its overseers long dead, its corridors reclaimed by earth and silence, but the carvings remain, the names remain, the voices remain, the truth remains, and now it remains with you. Because every time a forgotten story is told, every time a name carved in darkness is spoken aloud, every time a lost voice is heard again, the walls that tried to bury them crack just a little more. Magdalena's mark survived, Eleanor's mark survived, all of them survived in stone, in light, in memory. The empire tried to make them shadows, but they were not shadows. They were light in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome.